Hold on, are we getting into it? Are we getting into it? Are we starting?
Okay.
How the fuck do you say they did my storm dirty in French?
Absolute bollocks.
Alright, here's the intro. My name's Nathan. The other motherfucker who hasn't talked yet is Jason. We're gonna talk about X-Men 97, the sad episode that hurt me on the inside. This is Absolute Bollocks. That's Jason. Hell yeah. Okay, first things first. Cliffhanger. Magneto's in Xavier's office. What's he there for? Xavier left him at the X people in the will. Can you leave people in the will? Apparently. So, like, you being a layman to the X-Men, what's the first thing you think when you picture in your theater of the mind Magneto?
I think of like his red outfit, his horned helmet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think of Magneto as being as eloquent as I know he really is. I think as just being the guy who can come in and basically has telekinesis. It's not. I know it's magnetism, and he can only do metal, but he's so powerful as an Omega level mutant that he can pick up practically anything.
Yeah, that's a great case, like we talked about in the first episode, of stretching powers.
Yes.
Suddenly magnetism is everything.
Yeah, what I don't think of when I think of Magneto is being fucking sexy. He's so hot in that outfit with no, like, his shoulders exposed. That ridiculous giant M looks like something out of The Incredibles, but it worked for me. And now that he doesn't have to wear the helmet anymore, I was sold.
That hair can breathe. See, that's how you know that there's something with their genes, their mutant genes in their hair. Because if you wore that helmet for as long as he did, you'd have follicle damage.
Right.
There would be some issues.
Right.
But he does not. Flowing mane.
I was going to say, this version of Magneto, I was impressed. I mean, we're going to get into the episode, but his voice, his whole demeanor, the way he's drawn, everything about him is dynamic. I'll say it again, fucking sexy and engaging. I really get, just from how the character is designed and looks, him as an appealing alternative to Professor Xavier. I was going to ask you, do you remember watching The Wicker Man?
Which one?
The original one with Christopher Lee as Lord Summerisle.
Yeah, it's good.
I do like Ian McKellen as an actor. I really respect him as an actor. I think he's great. He did a great Magneto. But if they were going to do a live-action version of the Magneto that we're seeing now in X-Men 97, imagine a young Christopher Lee with that rich voice from The Wicker Man.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I enjoyed Ian McKellen as Magneto in the movies, but Magneto in the comics had a grandeur that I do not think... Like, he doesn't have the, like, I don't know, that gritty Chris Angel effect. I don't know how to describe it. He was very, like, well-spoken, and, like, Magneto was purple, not just in costume, but in dialogue. That dude said some monologues, and they were amazing, and he was the villain to the villainiest, and I don't think Ian McKellen got that.
Ian McKellen was he did bring the balance of making the character respectable. You watched it, and you went, this quote unquote villain is a strong leader, does have a strong stance. He did the performance well enough to make you stop and think, do I actually disagree with the bad guy, quote unquote bad guy?
Yeah, but he didn't scare me.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like Magneto is always a little scary. Like, you always knew where you stand with Magneto, but he's just a little scary.
When he's wearing a bright red jumpsuit with a big cape and a horned helmet, all of that conveys bad guy or evil.
Their suits in the comics often represented their role in any given moment. So, like, the difference between a character in plainclothes and costume sets a lot of tone for kind of like what they're doing. And especially with villains, when you see villains in plainclothes, it's like, yes, they're a villain, they're scary, they're dangerous, but they're not necessarily there to be villains. And there's costumes associated with different times that he's good and bad, because he flip-flops just like everybody else.
Sure. I do like this sleek black and purple caped costume that he has in X-Men '97, and that it comes around the front of his top, so it looks like he's just wearing a scarf.
Mm-hmm.
He does look kind of hipstery.
He looks very European.
That's better. He does look very European, and he's got everything about it is like heightened comic book aesthetics. But I'm just again, he's just so sexy. Like he can pull off anything. I'm not going to knock him for whatever he wears next. I meant to ask you though. You keep referring to purple language, and I honestly don't know what that means.
Oh, like flowery language, kind of verbose, over the top.
Melodramatic.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Like you could be like, I'm here to overthrow you, but purple would be like, for far too long have you ruled over this land with a hand that shows no kindness, and I'm here to take that hand and glove it permanently. Like, very, like...
Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo.
I honestly think, like, my flair for the dramatic came from reading comics, because the things that, like, going back and, like, reading through old comics, I'm like, this motherfucker said what?
Right.
All right.
We talked about that last time, and I absolutely love it. I love the heightened dialogue and heightened action that you can get away with in animation or in comics that feels unnatural in live action. And I it's a shame because it's wonderful. I also grew up doing theater and love Shakespeare, and I really appreciate it when somebody just comes out with an over-the-top monologue and really lays it down. I was going to ask you, they weren't explicit. They did a good job with the scene of Magneto inheriting the school, and the episode 2, Mutant Liberation Begins, starting with him addressing his X-Men about this change in leadership. And then it goes to Jean and Cyclops talking about why Cyclops especially being conflicted, like why the professor didn't choose him. And Jean says it was probably because he knew that she was pregnant and that it would give them the liberty to start a life on their own elsewhere if they wanted to, instead of tying him down by putting this responsibility on him without him having the choice. And that makes sense, but I was also going to ask you, because you know more about Professor X and Magneto's relationship over the duration of the comics. Is it a sense that at one point they were on the same side? They did have parallel ideals, and Charles is thinking that Magneto is the best person to run the school because he has a longer history of being in the fight. He has a longer history of wanting to make the world a safer place for mutants.
That's a complicated question. I think it can be distilled into two very shitty points, which is, now, granted, everything I say comes with a grain of salt of not remembering everything, but I don't ever remember Xavier thinking of Scott as more than just a child. He never treats him with more responsibility than leading the team. He's not in charge of anything. And, like, honestly, for good reason, because Scott's not necessarily a great leader. He's a good leader in the field, and he needs somebody more level-headed.
So
because
he's not a leader of the X-Men, like, out on the field. He's more just team captain.
Yes.
And, like, depending on which team is going out, someone else could be captain.
And, like, something with Cyclops is, like, throughout the entire series, it's always his ideals are because of Charles, but because of pride. Like, if you put Cyclops in the corner, he would probably do something shitty.
Well, that does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely happens in the comics, too. Like, he's not a great person.
Yeah,
he's just really zealous.
Down the line, his zealousness turns into the same kind of questionable quasi-villainy that Magneto has, where Cyclops basically, like, later on in the comics, says he's going to achieve his goals no matter what, no matter the cost of life or whose life. He has no loyalty except to his ideals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
he has a very zealous attitude towards what Charles has entrusted him to do, not necessarily with Charles's ideals and goals.
so the choice not to leave the school or pass leadership on directly to Scott may have been Charles able to see in him that too much power would lead to his own corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And like, I mean, as we are going to see throughout the episode, I also believe that Charles probably did it as either a power play, like, Magneto, I know you love me still, so I'm going to go ahead and make you do this, even though it doesn't align with what you want necessarily.
uh huh.
But because you love me, you're going to respect what I ask for my final wishes. And then also, if Charles Xavier comes back, well, then Magneto will just hand it back over. Magneto has no ownership of it. He doesn't care. He's only doing it because Charles died. If Charles popped back up, he would wash his hands of it instantly. Jumping back real quick to
Okay.
the conversation between Jean, quotes, and Scott and her being like, he wants us to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he did this for us. Knowing what we know from the end of the episode, which is that she's probably Madeline Pryor because the other Jean shows up. Spoilers at the end of the episode.
What?
Yeah, so at the end of the episode, the other Jean shows up. But having that knowledge and rewatching that, it definitely feels like Madeline Pryor is trying to pull Scott away for Mr. Sinister stuff. Because if Madeline Pryor, the Jean that's there,
Mm-hmm.
is the Madeline Pryor as it is in the comics, Sinister cloned her and made her
Right.
to bring the baby to him. And by
Oh.
taking Scott and
Oh.
Jean away from the X-Men, their support, their backup, much easier to pluck that baby.
Understood. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's
So
not
that's
what I was thinking. Because I was still thinking of her as the real Jean Grey. And who's just like wanting to start a family.
mhm.
But that makes sense as well. Ooh.
Yeah. She's
Layers.
pushing real hard in this episode to take him away. I mean, she was in last episode too, but like now having that information, all the interactions is very much so her trying to separate them.
So
And
it's
so,
the subconscious whispers of Mr. Sinister
mhm.
guiding her to make a responsible decision for her family, but one
Mhm.
that would make her vulnerable to being abducted by Mr. Sinister. Got it.
Yeah, I think it's very much so opportunistic on her part of being like, I can twist this into what I want or what
Mhm.
she's driven to do. But
That's cool.
we'll see.
Speaking of great purple language, Magneto, when he's down in the sewers with the Morlocks,
Hmm.
he had that great line of the Friends of Humanity, the stupid fucking Friends of Humanity, being so cruel. He's like, you even deny these outcasts the indignity of your waste. Like saying, we don't even want you living in the sewers, that's how much we hate you.
Hmm.
And he is able to put into perspective the degree of the blind hate of humans. He only sees the blind hate of humans towards mutants, but he's able to characterize it in a way that makes them look so bad and shows the folly of that there is a complete lack of humanity in their
Hmm.
discrimination.
Oh, absolutely. Like, much like some real world parallels. It's not that they don't want them around. It's just they don't want them to exist, period. So it doesn't matter where they go, it doesn't really matter. That's not the point.
And that it was almost a throwaway line on the news when they talk about now that Magneto has inherited the school and I
Hmm.
guess the school's bank accounts. He now paid for the relocation of
That
the
was
Morlocks to
amazing.
Genosha.
Yeah.
And offhand, he's just like, I wonder why Professor Xavier didn't think to do that beforehand. Oh, and it does make you stop and think, oh, okay, did he just not think of it, or is there more to Charles Xavier or less to Charles Xavier? We all have
Hmm.
ethical and moral blind spots. Was that an egregious
I
one
think.
of Professor
Go ahead.
Xavier's to fight for mutant equality, but not do anything to actually help the mutants in the
Yeah,
immediate
I've
present.
always kind of interpreted that as also the real world thing where what Magneto did further isolated mutants. Whether it's better for the Morlocks, I think Charles would have thought of that as continued isolation. Whereas by fighting for them to be there and eventually move out of the sewers, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that was the only justification I've ever been able to find with it.
It's a shame that in the medium of the Saturday morning animated cartoon series style, that we don't have characters sitting down and asking those questions
That would
side
be
by side.
incredibly boring.
It would be so boring. It doesn't match
Yeah.
the bright colors and the flashy action. But that's what you and I kind of connect with is stopping and thinking about hard questions like, yeah, is it better to relocate people to a place where they can uh, be amongst their own, or fight to make it a consensus amongst a diverse population
Yeah.
for everyone to get along with one
I
another?
mean, it's said in the comics, if not directly, with subtext, that Charles's ideology thinks that isolation is a step backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Magneto gets arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's that amazing interaction between Storm and Jean Grey,
Yes.
which
Oh, I
once
love
again
that
makes me
scene.
say, Storm is the fucking best. You're thinking like a mother. Oh, got me.
No, absolutely loved Storm. Storm has such dynamic lines and they're delivered so smoothly. I'm trying to figure
Hmm.
out who is the voice actor who plays Storm.
Uh, let's see, Allison Seeley Smith. Uh,
Okay.
she was the voice actor in the original, so
Oh,
like
cool. All
clearly she
right.
has nailed the tone of Storm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no,
I was
it's
I was gonna ask you in that scene, Jean seems to be distraught and worried about whether or not her kid's gonna be a mutant. And I was just wondering, is
yeah,
that even a possibility that mutants can have non-mutant the X gene doesn't get passed on? I
yeah,
I assumed because in the comics it seems like everybody has every new character is somebody's kid. So it seems like the X gene is just an automatic. It's assumed that's going to pass on to someone's kid.
more often than not, and I know for a fact there has been children born without it. Um, could not tell you their names because they're not X Men, so I do not care.
Well, this I found a list of saying non-mutants who have been X-Men, but that would be like Longshot and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's like aliens and people from other
Yeah.
dimensions and shit and gods, like Storm, who is a goddess.
Wait, is she literally a goddess?
I mean, even Eric, I call him Eric because we're friends, but Magneto is like Storm, the closest we will ever get to meeting a
Oh
goddess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Those two together. Those two together, dynamic duo. I'm so glad for that. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
You can tell who has run the school by who has the best dialogue.
Storm should run the school.
She has, and she should be running it now.
Um,
Nobody else.
actually, I don't know what Charles Xavier's deeper motivations were, but between Cyclops and Magneto, the answer is clearly Storm. If you flip a
Storm.
coin, it will land on Storm between those two men.
Hmm.
Fucking hell. All right, so Jean's worried about if the kid is a mutant. So it's possible for her to have a non-mutant kid.
Yeah,
Okay,
I definitely remember it happening. It doesn't happen a lot because again, that's boring, and it's
right.
usually used as like a uh, the storyline was like kid rebelling because he wasn't a mutant, he wasn't special,
Mm-hmm.
and developing hatred for mutants because of it.
Well, given all the other real world analogies that come with the X Men,
Hmm.
again, I know that's not the tone of the show, but that would have been a nice moment to have extended to kind of get into Gene laying out some pros and cons of like I want him. Of course, he's my kid. I want him to have a good life, a normal life, and her having to have a back and forth with Storm about does normal mean non mutant,
Yeah,
and isn't mutant normal for us, and aren't we fighting to make mutant part of the norm, which translates perfectly into how others are viewed in our real world.
Yeah. So, from my memory, the two that are coming to mind as far as mutants having non-mutant kids would be, let's see, Jubilee has a kid, Shogo, who is
What?
human.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She also becomes a vampire. I remember having a baby and being a vampire. And there was an amulet involved, but that is not this.
Her being a vampire, seriously, I love it. That makes me
Yeah.
like Jubilee a lot more.
Yeah,
I think
everybody
it's
gets
so
some
cool.
vampirism every now and then.
I want to see fireworks sparkler vampire. Fuck, fuck the glitter douche from Twilight. I want to see sparkle vampire Jubilee.
Explosion vampire.
Explosion. What is it? Pyro.
They're like pyrokinetics.
Pyrokinetic.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Treat her with respect. Say what it is. A pyrokinetic vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good. That's a relatively new run that I read.
Does she just go to raves and suck on glow sticks, or does she attack people's throats?
I don't think either. I think she's like a mentor and a mom. Like she's real responsible, if I remember correctly.
Okay, wow. All right. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Thank you for bringing it down to earth. I meant as a vampire, what makes her a vampire?
Oh, she has teeth and drinks blood and shit.
Yeah, that's what I asked.
Yeah.
I said, how is she a vampire? You're like, she's a mentor and a responsible mother.
I mean, she's a mom and a mentor first, and yeah, sometimes she drinks blood. We're gonna talk about next.
You put some respect on her name when you say it, Jason.
Jubilee is a delight.
Yes, she is.
She just wants to have fun and live her life, and I respect that.
I agree. No debate.
I was definitely more into the women in the X universe when I was younger because the dudes were all pretty fucking toxic. And it always made me a little uncomfy, so I tended to gravitate towards the women of the group.
I can see that as well.
It's hard to idealize some real shit behavior.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to stop and review why I liked the X-Men I liked
Hold on, tell me.
at different ages.
You asked me my favorite X-Men, which was that sweet mulleted boy Longshot. Who you into? Who's your fave?
My favorite X-Men was Gambit.
No shit.
And to be fair, and this kind of ties into what you were saying about being more invested in the female characters. I thought Gambit was cool. I liked his power. I liked his swagger.
Womanizing.
I like the versatility of the things. I liked that he was a bit of a rogue. I also liked that he dated Rogue.
Yes.
And that's what I was sort of projecting onto myself from the character was I think Rogue's amazing. I don't necessarily want to be Rogue as much as I want to be her boyfriend. Who's her boyfriend? Gambit.
Technically, nobody's Rogue's boyfriend. Rogue is a free agent 24/7.
And that really plays into my attraction style. And now I really am drawn to women who aren't exactly available, who, quote-unquote, can't be touched one way or another.
What are all those pedestals doing behind you?
They're propping up all kinds of crushes instead of myself.
Now I'm sad.
Yeah, and it very much hit home for me in the episode where I didn't know what was going on with Rogue and Magneto. I didn't have that history. But when she leaves his office at the end, and we just see Remy standing by himself and dropping the Queen of Hearts card, I just went, oh my goodness, I'm connecting to this show again. This is my emotional state. I don't know why my girlfriend's talking to this much hotter, older man. I felt Remy's jealousy and insecurity, and it felt very familiar.
Yeah, that made me sad for him.
Well, yeah, and just like Remy, I would have handled it by trying to be cool and trying to act like nothing happened. Being sassy about the other guy. Like when he goes to the UN, and Remy's just sitting there like, oh, well, I guess another bad time for Magneto, huh, Cher? I was like, that's right, you just slowly trash talk him. Quietly trash talk him instead of asking her directly and having a responsible conversation.
Why be grown up when you can be passive aggressive?
I know, the things we learn, the broken habits that we unlearn as we get older. Basically, don't build your relationship style off of the X Men, especially
No.
X Men '96.
The moment doesn't matter any X-Men property. You relate to a character, you need to take a step back and really think about yourself because none of them are
Yes.
good.
All right, back to the first episode. Why I like this character? Unexpected things. They walk in the kitchen. He's in a crop top, making breakfast for Rogue and for the
Oh, he's
other
making
X-Men.
beignets. He's not making
And
breakfast. He's making
he's
beignets.
making beignets. That's my ideal. That's how I see myself. I just want to be in the kitchen, my crop top, with with my girlfriend, just making beignets for all my
Yeah.
friends.
What's stopping you from doing that?
This weekend, nothing. This weekend I spent with my best friend, and this morning I woke up and I made cinnamon raisin French toast and chai tea lattes.
That's beautiful. Before tomorrow, this is just us. Cut this out. Before tomorrow, I want you to find a shirt and cut it. Make yourself a little croppy. I think it's a very interesting triangle because Gambit, Rogue, and Magneto were all bad people at some point.
That's true. That's true.
Bad guys, not bad people. They're all bad people, all of them. But like, so the connection, and I wish I remembered more about it, but it is Rogue and Magneto got real close
In the Savage Lands.
in the Savage Lands, yeah, in the Savage Lands series.
Okay.
So that's where that was.
And there's something with his magnetism that he can form a protective layer. He's an electro condom around his whole body.
Well, Rogue has absorbed the power of someone
Captain
with
Marvel.
magnetism,
Oh.
and so they cancel each other out. So when they touch it, like it's good.
That's something that would have been worth explaining because that scene made no sense to me, and that seems like a deep cut.
That was for me. That scene was for me.
Wow. I am really impressed. This is why I'm talking to you about X-Men.
Whose power was it? Don't fucking know. But no, like, and so I think like there was a really nice like moment of pathos between the two when she was like, I mean, it took a long time for them to trust me,
Yeah.
and I think that's definitely why he like chose to like be arrested and like essentially
Okay.
like because it was not his first instinct to go quietly. He was very much so like, I'll just kill you. But then he was like, I'm trying to do this thing for Charles.
Mm-hmm.
I need to not do it my way because clearly that's not working. And then it cuts to that scene like right when he's like, fine, then I'll go with you. And it cuts directly to Rogue, and I was like, she got through to him. Got through all that hair to his little ears.
And that's when the UN comes in with their metal helicopters.
Fucking fools.
I like that it goes straight from his arrest.
Yeah,
to the
there's no
trial.
time for.
It's like they had the tribunal already set up that day. There was no holding, no scheduling. Again, it's a Saturday morning cartoon. We move fast here. Like that night, they arrested him for that morning to be, and they made it public enough that the whole mob of rioters was ready to go in time to get.
They
down
all
to
got
the
a
UN
message
building
from Q
and just to be a
to get down here.
yes.
This particular
Yes.
scene, like the pre-trial and then the trial and then obviously the storming of the trial was all like, yep, I know that. This all feels real familiar.
It really did. Talking about purple language and talking about heightened drama. The melodrama of that trial scene was amazing. And the things we've mentioned already in this episode of, a deeper conversation about this, exploring that idea with a little more depth. We've acknowledged that the scenes where those conversations could have happened were not scenes to take time with, to really sit with, because the trial was the focus of the episode. And when Magneto started talking, I don't even think the judges had much to say other than to bait him with, he used the word soundbite indignation, which to me just sounded like the bullshit we see on fucking Fox News. And his eloquent responses, he was so elevated, standing there in chains, he looked more powerful than anyone else in the room, than anyone else in the show. He was just so focused.
Because you see all this imagery of him being captive, but we as the audience all know that like those aren't actually holding him there. He's there because he wants to be. Like
Hmm. And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that he was there to make a statement.
Mm.
You think of the Joker in The Dark Knight. Like, why is he in jail right now? Oh, because it's
Mm-hmm.
part of his plan. He wants to be there. It's part. He's going to do worse things there. Magneto was there only to make that speech. He knew he had the wisdom in his intent to go there in handcuffs to deliver those words and win them over with a speech. I don't think he went there planning to use his powers at all to fight back. He went over to, and not even to plead his case, but to lay it
No,
down
he
because
didn't
that's
give
not
a
his
shit.
style at all. He is not submissive. Oh
Yeah.
man, Magnet Daddy, never submissive. He went there just to lay it down for them how it is, and how the injustice was against him and against mutants, and that he was compared to humans, compared to the FOH especially, he was a force for good.
Oh, absolutely.
All in all, it's I'm gonna call them bigots and I'm gonna call them
Mm-hmm.
allegory for the KKK every time. It's like someone saying, "What are the awful things you did in the name of civil rights?" Like they were all fighting back against the prevalent forces of white supremacy.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had to fight back if you stopped being white supremacists.
Yeah, if you hadn't started this,
Mm-hmm.
then what you call retaliation or what you call terrorism wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it a great deal. And like I think the situation again, I'm gonna come back to this. Storm is a goddess. And this was a chance to
Storm is a
showcase it.
goddess.
Where they were like, get Magneto out of those chains, and everybody's like, do we want that? She's like, not the time for it, because she can put the pettiness aside and be, this is the situation, we need Nito on our side, and like everybody else is like, oh no, we shouldn't let him out, and she's like, no 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 no,
But
goals.
yes, that led to the two great things. One you're talking about were just like Magneto, and again, have they ever been a duo like teamed up,
Yeah,
fought side by side in the comics?
yeah.
Oh good, oh good. I want to hear more about that eventually. After his speech, for her to just take over the room,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Do not speak. Listen and do what I say," because she was absolutely right. Oh my goodness, Allison Seeley Smith, the command in that voice, the ability to take over the room was amazing.
Yeah.
But that also led to another great line from Magneto when the judges are saying, "What's going on?" and they're announcing, they're like, "Oh shit, they're coming for you, not just Magneto." And he just gets to say, smooth and low, right in their faces, "Oh, to play by the rules, and still they come for you."
Yeah. I loved everything about that. The cool lightning cage they made. That was pretty dope. That was like
This is
Dark Souls level shit.
this is what I want to see more of like what can be done with these powers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be creative with it. I will say I do prefer having characters having superpowered characters with creative powers that they have to imagine different ways to
Mm-hmm.
use them to reach different ends, varying based on what their goals are at the time. It's neat when they have something where they can interact with the, depending on what their environment is, they can interact with it differently and make more dynamic things happen.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that lightning cage, because it came out of nowhere. Why would I imagine that they were going to do that?
Yeah. And I think this show is gonna be really good for that desire on your part, like wanting to see those creative interactions, because this show has 30 years on the original series of watching the comics have that creativity. Because in the comics, it's there. It's generally sparse. Comics move incredibly slow compared to the show. Like, incredibly slow. Like, this episode would have been like 10 comics, honestly.
Yeah, they're really
Yeah, and
rushing
so
through.
those moments happen in the comics. They have those, like, the artist or the writer has this creative idea of, like, giant dead Dark Soul swords with lightning cage. Like, and so they
Right.
have that 30 years of creativity to draw on for these cool interactions and these cool. I go back to in the first episode, Cyclops using his eye beam as like as force to move himself around. Like that would have
Hmm.
never happened in the original series because that was something that kind of got figured out through the comics later on. And so they have this plethora to work with and do these really cool interactions. And I think
Right.
you're going to see even more of them as the show goes on.
That's awesome. I liked with Storm and Magneto taking care of things in the
Mm-hmm.
courtroom of the UN and the fight going on in the lobby outside. And it also gave us another good bad guy line from
Oh,
the
Christ.
Executioner
Yeah.
when he's fighting Cyclops. Well, the whole thing where he was like, "You guys act like you have it so bad. Normal people have it harder than you, except we have the dignity to not whine about it." And you said we were like flashing back about January 6th. Those lines from the Executioner are every fucking Trump rally I've seen, uh, especially the summer 2020 when all the MAGA people were mad about Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And this idea of like, why are you people whining so much about all your problems? We have problems too, but we have the dignity not to make a big scene about them. Oh,
That
yep.
was that was
Fucking
absolutely the
Bo.
best because he's like, we have the dignity not to whine about it. I'm like, motherfucker, you are whining about it right now.
You're going around terrorizing people. You're going around hunting people. You just spent your time assembling an anti-mutant gun.
He goes, I hate the whining almost as much as I hate you. And it was just like, oh, oop, oop, he said it.
It's that anti-BLM sentiment of how dare you speak up for yourself.
Yeah.
Not even taking
Mm-hmm.
action. How dare you speak up for yourself?
Yeah.
How dare you bring this to light?
I mean, we get our cathartic moment when he gets his ass kicked. Like, I was like, oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, I would have liked to have seen Magneto drop him.
No. But he's a good boy now. He even cried about it a little bit. Because
He had that one tear that
that
was
was,
maybe the most dramatic single tear running down someone's face.
you just feel it. You feel him having to go against what he believes is right for this person that he loves. And he's just like, oh, man tier.
I would tell everyone who has a passing interest, if you're not a diehard X-Men fan, check out X-Men 97, Episode 2, Mutant Liberation Begins, and just go towards the end and watch Magneto's speech when he has magnetically snatched up Executioner, snatched up the three judges from the UN, and carried them up into the atmosphere to give them the perspective of look how small the Earth looks from up here, and how
Yeah.
much smaller we are as individuals, we are as a people, a place, a country, at this height. See the bigger picture instead of a single moment or a single person, and how much effect a decision can have over this whole
Mm-hmm.
planet, and weigh that more wisely than a knee-jerk reaction, or like you said, soundbite indignation over things that you don't necessarily wholly understand because of your narrow perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man! And with that cross-cut with Jean in labor and giving birth,
Mm-hmm.
and that doctor saying, "We don't do mutant births here."
Oh my gosh. I love the Rogue thing when they're like, bro, can you just take his doctor powers?
Yeah, that was again another fun example of using someone's powers in an unexpectedly creative and useful way. For her to be like, "Oh, I don't know how to do something. Oh, we're in a tight jam. That guy does. I'll just take his knowledge because he
Yeah.
won't do it."
Well, it's also a great example of how Scott doesn't really believe in Charles's thingy because he's the moment he needed, he was just like, oh yeah, kill that person and take his doctoring powers.
Wait, but did she kill him?
I mean, more often than
Is
not, the
is
reason she
that the
doesn't touch is
extent of
because
her
she kills
powers?
people. Yeah, I mean, she killed the first guy she kissed.
I
Or
thought that
did
was
she
a,
kill him? I
no, I thought
mean,
she
like,
put him in a coma. Put him in a
yeah,
coma for like 3 years or something.
is that not dying?
It's not.
It's brain
Oh,
death. I'm a doctor, Jason. Dr. Nathaniel Tice.
oh yeah.
And Rogue murdered him.
On one hand, because he was a bigot, I don't care.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I do care because I don't believe in murder. I don't think murder
Mm-hmm.
is right for any reason.
But
Um,
Cyclops does. Cyclops loves that shit.
See, I was going to agree with you on the point of that seemed like a very important fight, and he was team captain. He was the leader on the outside in the lobby, and that he runs off with Rogue. He takes a super powerful mutant, a flyer, being one of the more powerful mutants who can coordinate better with Bishop,
Mm-hmm.
and just leaves for a personal thing. I was very conflicted about that. That seemed like the plot needed that. We wanted to see Scott at the birth of his kid there with Jean. That made sense. But I couldn't help being like, you just ditched out on a life or death fight with rioters, man.
And threw his supposed morals out the window. Like,
He made his
like
loyalty
that.
is to his ideals, not to the greater good necessarily.
Yeah. Whereas Magneto's up there being a good dude. Scott's in there being like, murder that human.
Who was in the UN courtroom when Magneto left with the Executioner and the judges?
Storm. Oh my god. Okay, so we skipped over my notes of.
She was on the ground,
No!
depowered, vulnerable.
My sweet Storm, you took her. So she's depowered, and it crushed me on the inside. And then I forgot what happened for the rest of the episode because I was just crying.
Oh no.
There was tears in my eyes.
No.
Because, holy shit, the note that she leaves.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And the moment she flinches when the thunder happens. Oh.
That kind of
Cut my heart
that
out.
kind of hit me. That kind of
We walk in two different worlds now. My life before is like a long distant dream. Buck, Storm, get me. These are that was very moving. And then you see the scene with Morph and Wolverine, and it made me feel real good, and I started crying for other reasons.
that was such a brief little non-dialogue scene that you had to just understand what was going on. I didn't get it until later because it was in the previous episode when they go to the club looking for Roberto da Costa. Morphs into Jean Grey and teases Wolverine like, "Oh, look at me and my perfect life and my sweet baby I'm having with a different guy." Watching that, I realized, okay, this is the kind of friendship that kind of you and I have. That they are close enough that Morph isn't basically asking to get beat up. He isn't teasing or baiting Wolverine like a jerk.
He's being honest with Wolverine.
Yeah. And I mean, to get personal, I think that's the kind of friendship you and I have. We can just stop and say, "Hey, did you see how you're being an idiot? Do you see how maybe you're not thinking that through?" Like, oh, okay. Like, I know you're mad. I know you're depressed. I know you're sad about something, but let me be a bit of perspective from a different angle to help you see there's more going on than what you think, than what you're focused on.
Well, yeah. I think that especially between us, it is hard to see those things when they're presented in a saccharine way.
Yeah.
Maybe is the way to put it, and where you're able to, like, when you call me out on stuff, you definitely like take the piss out of it, and it de-arms me enough to see it. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I love that. I love that he shows up with chips and beer, and it was real good comic timing for him to just show up with like chips and beer, like, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" Because you see Wolverine brooding in a tree, like that could be the gesture. But then he goes, "I brought these to enjoy while we fight," and then turns into Sabretooth. And that shows a deeper understanding of Wolverine, because Wolverine, is a toxic character, in as much as he works in a brutal mindset. It's like, let's fight it out. You're mad.
Okay.
Oh, are you going to correct me on that?
No. I think you're
Okay,
absolutely correct. I just want to touch
please.
on the beautiful thematic line that this creates. So you have this over narration of Storm talking about how she's in different worlds and we all want somebody who understands us. And then we get the clip of Magneto and Rogue touching because
Right.
he's the only person that Rogue can touch. And then you see Wolverine and Sabretooth because Wolverine's can't die. He is I mean, he can die,
But his
obviously,
heart
but
can
like
break.
he instantly heals. Yeah, and he can't roughhouse because he's gonna kill whoever he roughhouses with. But both him and Sabretooth can regenerate because
Hmm.
they're brothers or friends, depending on the comic. But like Wolverine wants to play roughhouse, and nobody else can meet him
Hmm.
on that level. But Sabretooth can, and so Morph gives him that. Their friendship is, I know this is something you want, and I can give it to
Yeah,
you.
that deep
And so he turns
understanding.
into, and so you see, yeah, you see those moments of connection excuse me, Storm is talking about in her letter, and you see that play out, and you see these like beautiful little moments that they have with each other because they're very othered. I mean, even beyond being mutants, a lot of them, their mutations prevent them from having that intimate connection, and so being able to find that with
Yeah,
others,
with but then you also
beautiful.
see the more human side of these superheroes with like Remy
Hmm.
standing outside Magneto's office, and there's no superpower that can affect feeling jealousy or feeling left out or
Hmm.
not knowing what's going on with your partner, feeling uncertain about what's going on with your partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's yeah, because that's the other thing is like I think Remy is a womanizer, and I think
that's
Rogue
true.
is
Oh
able to
man.
push back on that a significant amount.
Oh
So
man,
like
that sucks to
he, re-
hear. I hate that you said that, but it is true. It is true.
I mean, it
And like
is,
you
and
said,
I,
that's
I,
the kind of thing where you step back and go, look at whichever X-Men character you identified with for points A, B, C. Look at them closer and look at D, E, F, G, and look at more of the sides of their complex personality, and see if you really identify with those also or not.
I will come to your defense and say that I don't think you're a womanizer. I think that you like the idea of it because it puts up a little wall and protects your delicate little heart.
Yeah. I like this the smooth
But
talker rogue
you
kind of
you
personality. I like that character,
hmm
but yeah,
you want to be disarmed. You want somebody to disarm you. There's somebody that wants to be there enough to pick that lock and get there.
that's true. Oh my god, see this is just we were talking about. You just fucking beer chips and saber tooth to me.
Mm-hmm. Look at my big claws and free
I
mane.
I
I'm gonna
do
get you.
I do want someone who can disarm like the sarcasm and disarm the snark and
Mm-hmm.
just let me be a crop top cooking boy.
Make me a beignet. Honestly, I don't need to make
That's
beignets.
what I
I can
really
pop
want.
over to the Blue Orangery and get some beignets.
I just want to worship at the feet of of a goddess mutant and make her beignets.
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
even that statement had a huge fucking pedestal in it. This is why we go to therapy. This is things we
mhm.
work on.
That's why we do podcasts because boys don't go to therapy.
In that case, we're bucking the trend because I had therapy
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, and it was about things like that.
But yeah, that episode breaks my heart every time. I watched it 5 times now, and it hurts every time.
Oh, maybe a new character. Last time we were speculating about who Jean Grey's baby was going to be, and they say
Mm-hmm.
it is Nathan Summers.
I did see
So
that.
is
So
that is Cable?
yeah, yeah, this is in line with the Madeline Pryor
Okay,
chron that word that I looked for right there.
canonical,
Yeah, chronological, whatever.
chronologically canonical.
See it's so far aligning with the bit in the comics that has to do with this stuff.
Oh, the chronology
There we go,
of this story. Okay,
chronology. There was an R and an ology in there. We got there. Chronology.
the chronology.
Yeah. Uh.
Well, yeah, being
So like,
a Madeline Pryor, that brings us to like the the cliffhanger ending of the episode.
oh, I wanted it to more for you and me both, buddy.
So we got two
I
ladies.
it is one of my favorite subversions.
Wait,
Oh, they're gonna
what?
like the trope in shows and stuff where they're like, oh, they're gonna come back to the door, and either they don't come back to the door and you get like a really sad ending, or there's the knock on the door and they go and it's somebody else and it like sets up more stakes or something.
Yes,
Like, bon mot, chef's kiss.
So you're saying Chef's Kiss because you absolutely were suckered into thinking it was going to be Storm coming back.
I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be Storm, but just the way they used the trope, I enjoy that trope. I enjoy how they
Right.
used it. It was good. It was like it's like I don't know, I can't think of an analogy, but it was just like, ooh, good filmmaking, good story.
I was wrapped up in the contextually fitting turn of Scott and Jean now reconsidering leaving the X Men. Like
Mm-hmm.
without Storm, should we really go? After being pretty intent in the first episode and kind of um, Scott questioning his place in the X Men after uh, leadership being passed to Magneto. It really
Mm-hmm.
felt like that was their direction, especially after having a baby. They would want to. They would have an impetus to start a new life elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But with this loss of a friend or loss of a teammate, now the conflict comes back into the story, comes back into their decision making. That again, great dynamic writing. Really,
Yeah.
really loved that.
Yeah.
Um,
Because as shitty as Scott is, he does know how to keep the team together, and losing Storm and Jean and him would leave the team in ruin.
which is funny
They would.
because in episode one, when they're out on the basketball court and he's basically trying to uh, exercise authority as team captain in lieu of Professor X, you got Wolverine
Mm-hmm.
and other people going, "Well, who made you the boss?" And anybody but
Yeah.
you, bub.
I mean, we all need the person to rebel against to create adhesion.
Sure.
That's why you have drill sergeants in the military. You have the hard ass who everybody can be like, well, they're correct, but this fucking sucks, so let's all shit on them because they can take it.
Yeah. Oh, and we almost forgot to say there was that scene with Storm and Beast when he was checking out her biology and concluded
Yeah.
that it was permanent, that her powers are gone. That's what made me think that she might not come back. Is if we're not going to have a mutant Storm, would we still want the Aurora character? I know
I
you
wouldn't
you
be.
would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
She could take
yeah.
over the school while they're out being superheroing. She could be a non-mutant.
God forbid they have a fucking teacher at the school who's just a teacher.
Who can tell kids.
No.
She would be again her own leadership skills, her own dynamic personality, but then to stand there as the head of the mutant school and say there are real consequences for not playing it safe.
Mm-hmm.
There are real risks to the life we choose, and there are real threats against us.
Yeah.
That would hit home so hard.
I mean, honestly, my comic book instincts are tingling that because of how hard they drove it.
Your comic tingle?
My comic tingle. My years of reading comics makes me think you drove that point home way too fucking hard. Cable's gonna. So the gun that they use to shoot her
Mm-hmm.
absolutely is from the future. A lot of their tech is from the future because that's what Pew Pew Bishop uses.
Okay.
Looks the same as the guns that they also use
So you think FOH got that gun somehow from the future?
from the future.
Okay.
Because so in the future the Sentinels win.
Mhm.
That's Bishop's future and Cable's future, I think, at the same time, just much further on. Um, so my guess, if Nathan Summers goes to become Cable, he also comes back and is like, "Look, I can undo the shitty gun thing because this gun's from the future."
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm hoping for. That's my own little heart's desire. There's all the parts for that to happen. Will it? No. But it's what I want. Because again, they twisted that knife a little too much to have it be she's just gone.
Right.
But they might not.
Right.
Maybe she's just gone.
Well, and then we get the surprise of a second Jean Grey, which plays right into what you were saying about the Madeline Pryor storyline. Albeit
That's my guess.
Scott isn't off in Alaska. He didn't actually leave and go do the actual Madeline Pryor storyline. They're kind of weaving it in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, none of this has been like straight up in line with the comics. It's just there's lots of pieces mushed together.
So what do you think? Do you think this is Madeline Pryor? Do you think this is the real Jean Grey who's showed up in the night?
I mean, it would be wild for them to stick so close to that storyline and not have it be Madeline Pryor, but maybe
Or
not.
do you think it's Madeline Pryor who showed up?
No, no, I think it's Jean Grey who showed up. I think it's Madeline
Do you
Pryor
think
who,
it's
because that's what I was saying, that she's been trying to pull Scott
because
away.
Madeline Pryor is Nathan Summers' mom?
Real, yeah.
You'll have to
Uh,
you'll have to tell me how authentically they're following the storylines from the comics, because again, to make a show spicy, sometimes you flip the script a little bit. Could it be that this is Madeline Pryor showing up in the night, and it's been the real Jean Grey all along? The real Jean Grey in this is going to be Nathan Summers' mom, and we're going to have to question it and figure it out.
Absolutely, because I mean, they're using beats from story arcs,
Mm-hmm.
but everything else is different. Like Storm didn't lose her powers when this was all going on. So like,
Oh,
yeah, Magneto wasn't taking over the school when this was going on. These are all different things. Like, I feel like the Magneto beat is pretty unique. I mean, he definitely does take over the school for Xavier at one point.
right.
But again, the arc is there, the beats are there, but like the minutia that connects them, very different. And there's different beats kind of intermingled, which is what I'm really excited about because they're playing with a lot of stuff that we've experienced before.
So are you saying that this show, working in so many different storylines per episode, might overall be a little bit of an homage
Yeah, it
to the
feels like they're
comics, which we're trying to touch on as much as possible to celebrate, but maybe not giving every storyline a full arc, and instead reducing it to beats within a more concise, compressed story.
yeah, absolutely. Because I think again, if you read the comics, that would be a bitch to condense into a TV show. There's a lot of stuff happening in there, a lot of like interpersonal. It's very soap opera-y,
Mm-hmm.
and so it feels like they took the big broad strokes and then gave it interesting flourishes around it. And
Cool.
because of that, I can't trust that it's going to go the same way that it did with the original storylines. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm having a
That's
great time
that's
with
why
this
it's
show.
exciting.
Yeah, I'm loving this.
Oh, I can't wait to watch episode 3. I have been a good boy and haven't watched them until
What is the title of episode 3? Because that might give us a clue what's going to happen.
we were wrong about.
flesh.
No, I'm pretty sure the actual title is "We're Sorry About Storm. That was our bad. She's back. Look, we also gave her a cool gold cape."
Okay, we need a good outro for this episode. We are
Oh,
excited
yeah.
about episode 3. This has been episode 2. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been Jason and Nathan.
That's a wrap. That was the episode. You fucking nailed it. And you know what's absolute bollocks? Taking Storm's powers away. Fuck you, Disney.
There's a knock on your door and they come back again. If you can't talk love, then you better pretend they are with us without weapons. Are you ready for the sex, girls? No one is ready for the sex, girls. Are you ready for the sex?
I feel professional. I actually quit my job to do this full time.
Me too.
That's not a joke.
That's not a joke. Yeah.
And that's why you do the editing.